Is it often difficult for many people to effectively control their emotions? Let's first look at a story about emotions. There was a man named Adiba. Whenever he got angry, he would run home and run around his house and land 3 times. Later, his house became bigger and bigger, and he had more and more land. But every time he got angry, he still had to run around the house and land 3 times. His grandson asked his grandfather, "When you get angry, you run around the house and the land. Is there any secret behind this?" Adiba shared with his grandson that in his youth, he would run around his house and land whenever he got angry. "While running, I reflected on how small my house and land were. I have no time or energy to be angry at others. Later, when I became rich, I thought as I ran, my house is so big, why should I bother with others? When I thought of this, my anger subsided." It seems that Adiba has found a good way to control his emotions. But for most of us, we are often controlled by our emotions rather than controlling them. Buddhism identifies 8 forms of suffering in life: birth, aging, sickness, death, not getting what one desires, encountering those one dislikes, losing loved ones, and the dominance of the 5 aggregates. The 8 sufferings essentially highlight the suffering caused by impermanence. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from impermanence, which is a fundamental aspect of life, leading people to experience various emotions. From a modern evolutionary psychology viewpoint, both pain and happiness are considered illusions experienced by humans. Why do you say that? Let's first look at a psychology experiment. In this experiment, the experimenter placed a light in front of the monkey. Every time the light comes on, the monkey gets juice. At this time, dopamine will be secreted in the brain of the monkey who feels happy. Gradually, the monkey felt happy and secreted dopamine every time it saw the light, even though it had not yet drunk the juice. In the end, turning on the light caused the monkey to secrete more dopamine than drinking the juice. In this experiment, even if the monkey did not drink the juice, it could still feel much more happiness than drinking the juice. The monkey's happiness was an illusion, indicating that its body didn't require the reward of drinking the juice. In fact, as primates, humans and monkeys alike, the pain and happiness they feel are often an illusion. It's just like many people often believe that true happiness will come if they acquire something. But after getting it, it doesn't feel as good as expected, so people's emotions are just their own illusions. And this is the setting that natural selection has given to humans. We are like living in a virtual world like in the movie The Matrix, and it is our emotions that give us all kinds of illusions. Welcome to the Daily Reading Club. This time the book we are interpreting is Insight, written by Robert Wright. The subtitle of this book is Why is Buddhism True? The author analyzes Buddha's philosophy through the lens of evolutionary psychology, removing supernatural aspects. From a modern psychological viewpoint, Buddhism lacks concepts like 6 realms of reincarnation, cause and effect, and supernatural powers, presenting the Buddha primarily as an enlightened philosopher. In the end, only the Buddha's philosophy and methodology of meditation practice remain. Next, we will combine evolutionary psychology and Buddhism to solve 3 problems. First, we use evolutionary psychology to find out the process and reasons for the formation of the illusion of emotion. Secondly, how does Buddhist practice break the illusion of emotions? Finally, we will share how to reach the highest level of spiritual practice, that is, form is emptiness. How do emotional illusions come to be formed? Suffering is an important concept in Buddhism. According to legend, before Sakyamuni became a monk, he had a conversation with his father, King Suddhodana, asking the king to guarantee to fulfill his 4 wishes. I might choose not to be a monk. First, there is no sign of aging. No illness pain exists. Third, there is no terror of death. Fourth, everything is indestructible. King Jingpen shook his head repeatedly and said that no one could guarantee these 4 wishes. After seeing the 4 sufferings of birth, old age, sickness, and death in the human world, Shakyamuni decided to start practicing. So how exactly does suffering come into existence? We often hear that the reason we feel suffering is because of attachment. The author Wright proposed that suffering is dissatisfaction, which is also based on Buddhism. After some research into the origins of early Buddhism, some people found that a more accurate translation of suffering is dissatisfaction. How does evolutionary psychology explain this? Humans, from a biological evolution standpoint, primarily aim to propagate their genes. To continue the genes, people have to eat, have children, compete, gain prestige, and so on. Some individuals prefer to appreciate nature and enjoy life without the desire to pass on their genes. So how can natural environments encourage humans to engage in the activities mentioned above? Natural selection has given humans 3 settings. Happiness can be achieved through fulfilling activities like eating and falling in love, as these experiences bring joy. Secondly, happiness is short-lived and it cannot last for long. We need to consistently perform certain tasks repeatedly. Third, based on the above 2 settings, the brain tends to focus on the first point, that is, the brain tends to ignore that happiness is short-lived, and it will focus more on pursuing happiness. In other words, nature has set us up to ignore whether we can be happy for a long time. It only uses happiness as bait to help us achieve the goal of continuing our genes. From the perspective of population gene transmission, this is certainly a good thing. However, for individuals, this situation is a trap. Many people chase fleeting and false happiness throughout their lives. This is like the monkey experiment we mentioned at the beginning. Turning on the light caused the monkeys to secrete more and more dopamine, while drinking the juice brought less and less dopamine. It seems that the monkey's happiness comes from the anticipation of the juice, but it is not very happy when it actually drinks the juice. Isn't it the same for humans? We always look forward to getting things that we don't have yet, but after we actually have them, we don't feel as happy anymore. This is similar to suffering in Buddhism. Suffering means dissatisfaction. As primates, the happiness experienced by humans is ultimately just an illusion. Our emotions often feel as if we are navigating a complex virtual world, much like in the movie The Matrix. It's an illusion given to us by our genes. Descartes once said, "I think, therefore I am." What this implies is that my ability to think can serve as proof of my existence. But the Buddha believed that even a person himself could be an illusion. Not to mention the thoughts in one's own mind. What does this mean? The Buddhist scripture, "The 5 aggregates are emptiness," recorded the conversations between the Buddha and 5 monks, and these conversations revealed the 5 things that constitute me, the 5 aggregates. The aggregates include the form aggregate, human body, feeling aggregate, basic emotions, perception aggregate, basic perceptions, and volition aggregate, mental form. Thoughts and behaviors relate to human consciousness and fortune. The Buddha engaged each of the 5 monks in discussion, debating the concept of ownership concerning the 5 aggregates, ultimately concluding that none of these aggregates truly exist. So then, what am I? Is it true? One thing is absolutely certain. I am not truly the king of my own body and cannot fully exercise control over myself. There are numerous examples of this concept in various aspects of life. We aim to complete our tasks before using our phones, but we often can't resist the temptation to check them early. Here, I strongly advocate for focusing on completing work tasks first, and then picking up the phone to browse. For example, when facing the person we love, we know that we should be considerate and caring towards each other, but sometimes our mouths still uncontrollably speak bad words to each other. I am the one who truly desires to live in peace, but who is it that is feeling angry? Anyone familiar with Buddhism knows that there's a concept called impermanence, which means that nothing is constant. The Buddha believed that each of the 5 aggregates changes over time. All things are impermanent. Modern psychology provides a good explanation for this difficult concept. People's identities change over time due to varying influences and different thinking processes. This means that people who are influenced by different modules will have different images. So how many selves can a person have? The psychology book, The Rational Animal, says that natural selection has given the human brain 7 thought modules, so humans can have at least 7 selves. Each module represents an emotion. The stronger the emotion, the module represented by this emotion will occupy your brain. But usually it is difficult for an emotion to control the human brain for a long time because there is competition between various thinking modules in the brain. So the Buddha said that life is full of suffering and that all troubles are illusions. From the perspective of evolutionary psychology, human emotions are actually the settings of our thoughts by our genes. If something is beneficial to the continuation of the group's genes, people tend to feel happy. If doing something is harmful to the continuation of genes, people feel pain. Such a setting is beneficial to the genes of the group, but for individuals, it is an illusion. Even some genetic settings may be harmful, because genetic settings from hundreds of millions of years ago may not necessarily be suitable for the current social environment. For example, our genes program us to crave sweet, high-fat foods. This setting allowed our bodies to store more nutrients in the past when food was scarce. But in the modern society where food is abundant, eating so much high-fat and high-sugar food will only harm the body. In other words, our liking for high-fat and high-sugar foods is also an illusion given to us by emotions. Not only happy emotions, but also emotions such as anxiety and fear are an illusion. In primitive society, if a person was walking in the wild and heard rustling sounds in the grass, he would most likely worry that there were wild animals hiding in it, and would run away first. This emotion of fear of any disturbance was very useful in primitive society, but today it causes all kinds of anxieties among people. In a primitive society, individuals depend on one another for survival, making personal impressions crucial for social relations. But today we are facing strangers more often. These people don't care what kind of people we are, but we still pay special attention to the impression we make on others. It appears that all of our emotions might actually be mere illusions. The happiness we think we have, the anxiety we feel, these emotional illusions can easily control our behavior, causing us to pursue things that we think can give us happiness. Makes us anxious about something that doesn't exist. So, since emotions are illusions given to us by our genes, how should we get rid of the illusion of emotions? How to get rid of the control of emotions? This brings us to the topic of Buddhist practice. Practice Buddhism to get rid of emotional illusions. The Buddhist practice we are talking about is meditation. In Buddhism, meditation can be roughly divided into 3 schools. The first is Zen, which is similar to thinking about some fables, allowing people to gain enlightenment, while sorting out the plots, and sometimes there will be some verbal debates. The second is Tibetan Buddhism. His approach primarily involves visual imagery, making it ideal for artists. The author Wright advocates that ordinary people do the third thing, which is introspection. Mindfulness meditation aligns closely with contemporary psychological practices. Vipassana requires us to be our own observers, to be aware of our own emotions and the feelings of our own body. Mindfulness meditation is very popular in the West. For example, Google has set up a meditation room specifically for its employees. Mindfulness meditation can not only restore your energy, but also give you insight into things and true personal freedom. We also mentioned mindfulness meditation when we interpreted the book The Power of Now. Mindfulness meditation is very simple. All you have to do is find a quiet place and sit down, then just focus on your breathing. You can even practice mindfulness meditation anytime and anywhere, such as focusing on the feeling of the soles of your feet while walking. The most important thing about mindfulness meditation is to focus on the sensations of the 5 senses of the body and achieve a high degree of unity between the mind and the body. Many times when a person is doing something, his brain starts to wander randomly, doing this and thinking about that. At this time, all kinds of thoughts and emotions will continue to pop up. Gradually, your emotions will control your body. What mindfulness meditation aims to do is to stop your thoughts from running wild and ultimately achieve a high degree of unity between the mind and the body. Continuing mindfulness meditation practice. We will not be troubled by various emotional and mental illusions, will not be controlled by emotions, and will be free. Its primary purpose is to practice reclaiming and taking back control of our bodies. After a lengthy period of dedicated and focused practice, a person can achieve a remarkably deep state of calm and consistently gain a profound sense of joy from the heart. The Eightfold Path in Buddhism includes right mindfulness as the seventh and right concentration as the eighth aspects. Focused breathing, a key practice in Theravada Buddhism, is essential for achieving right concentration. Concentration through breath focus is a fundamental skill, leading to the practice of mindfulness. Mindfulness requires you to apply your concentration to every aspect of your life at any time. At this time, a person can concentrate on appreciating a flower, and can concentrate on enjoying the taste of the food while eating. Concentration in meditation is an exercise in living in the present moment, which is to focus only on the present moment and exclude any distracting thoughts. In fact, in most cases, mindfulness meditation fights against various small thoughts. For example, thinking about what to do at work tomorrow and looking forward to meeting a lady you admire. These thoughts have something in common. Either they are looking back to the past or thinking about the future, but neither is about the present. And they are frequently connected or associated with another individual. Human suffering, as Adler noted, arises from interpersonal relationships, highlighting our focus on people-related issues. No matter what kind of emotions or thoughts we have, what we should do is not to suppress or stifle them, but to acknowledge their existence, allow them to appear, and then focus on the five senses of the body. These emotions will gradually disappear. When we practice mindfulness meditation to the end, no emotion can disturb or control us. In Buddhist terms, it means that a person gradually gets rid of suffering. So what is the ultimate goal of mindfulness meditation? That is, form is emptiness, which is what we are going to talk about next. The goal of meditation is that form is emptiness. Once freed from emotional illusions and control, the aim is to attain the state where form is emptiness. That is, realizing that the world is empty. What does this mean? Let's discuss this in detail below. Once, the author Wright was studying in a meditation training class. Workers were outside the classroom using electric saws to cut wood. But the noise was fairly quiet. Listening to it is painful. So, Wright utilized meditation as a method to effectively cope with it. He first accepted his aversion to the sound of the chainsaw, and then regarded this feeling as an emotion. At this time, the sound of the chainsaw was still there, but it didn't seem to affect him anymore. Later, Wright even recognized the music and the sound of the chainsaw. This experience was Wright's first experience of form as emptiness. The sound of a chainsaw is an objectively real phenomenon. Wright disliked the sound of a chainsaw because it brought with it associations of fear. The sound of the chainsaw reminded Wright of the destructive force it represented. These associations are the connotations that people give to the sound of a chainsaw. In other words, the so-called color is equivalent to the connotation associated with the sound of a chainsaw. We might as well call it the color of the sound of a chainsaw. Emptiness signifies a lack of meaning but does not imply that nothing exists. What Buddhist scholars call emptiness does not mean that everything in this world does not exist. Rather, it means that the connotation we give to everything is empty. Psychologist Paul Bloom suggests that a key trait of humans is their focus on the connotations of things, aligning with modern psychological understanding. For example, a new tape measure is only worth a few dollars, but if it was used by President Kennedy, it can be sold for $40,000 or $50,000 at an auction. For example, a wedding ring is originally just a ring, but if it is a wedding ring given by your lover, then it has great significance. Psychologist Robert Wright has proposed that we automatically and instinctively assign meaning to everything we observe and look at. For example, if the letter Q is associated with IQ, a person will have different emotions. Natural settings require us to quickly judge the things around us as good or bad, which is beneficial to survival. The feelings that things bring to us are the connotations we give to things, which is color. Therefore, color is our judgment of the connotation of things, and these connotations have some properties. First of all, color, that is, connotation, is generated automatically. When we see something, we will define it involuntarily. Second, the connotation will be affected by the story, just like the tape measure we just talked about. Third, connotations are subjective, which means that there are 1,000 Hamlets for 1,000 readers. So we observe the world through tinted glasses. The world we see is the world in our own eyes, and we are always giving meaning to the things around us. This world is a world full of colors, and this is the explanation of color in the book. For example, a story about weeds. There were some weeds growing in the back garden of the house, such as dandelions, and the owner wanted to pull them out when he saw them. One time, the kids at home saw it and asked, "Aren't dandelions pretty with those little yellow flowers? Why pull it out?" Children value nature and the activity, whereas adults focus on lawn maintenance, highlighting different perspectives on the same task. If you give different connotations to things, the meaning of things will be different. Therefore, the meanings we give to the world are subjective and full of contradictions. Color affects our experience of the real world. If we don't look through tinted glasses, what would the world be like? Wright spoke with individuals who achieved advanced spiritual practice. As meditation deepens, practitioners report a genuine experience of emptiness, leading to a diminished perception of the world's colors. When you look at all these things, the chairs are chairs and the table is a table, but they don't bring up those strong emotional reactions. The practitioner also mentioned two very specific experiences. When a person understands emptiness and colorlessness, they find peace in observing the world around them. The second point is that people have all these preconceived feelings about these things that are not actually true. Form as emptiness signifies meaning. If a practitioner wants to truly experience emptiness, in addition to abandoning form, he must also eliminate ignorance, which are the three poisons in Buddhism. Wright's explanation of the three poisons in the book is very simple. Greed is attraction, anger is negative emotion, and ignorance is the sum of greed and anger. When one has cultivated the skill of overcoming ignorance to the extreme, one can achieve nirvana. Traditional Buddhism offers a complex and enigmatic explanation of nirvana that is hard to grasp. Buddhists believe nirvana has clear characteristics, even though it can't be described in words. Those who achieve nirvana experience profound internal satisfaction, peace, and freedom, along with a clear understanding of their surroundings. In short, when a person practices to a certain level, he can reach the state of selflessness. A state where one is entirely liberated from cause and effect, perceiving the essence of things instantly. Buddhism is a practice that promotes peace and freedom by enabling individuals to select their experiences. It encourages the removal of subjective imagination, allowing for a deeper and richer experience of life. That experience will be even greater fun and a continuous source of happiness. The practice of Buddhism makes one's inner self stronger. The human brain, shaped by natural selection over millions of years, can sometimes mislead individuals, preventing self-recognition and a clear view of the world, ultimately trapping them in metaphorical shackles. From the perspective of evolutionary psychology, the reason why we look at everything with emotion and feeling is that natural selection has set our brains up. We consider all ships with powerful engines to be good, and vice versa, we consider them to be bad. Pain is, happiness is, and trouble is also. Any kind of emotion contains an element of illusion. So when you feel happy or angry again, please don't lose your temper first, because that could very well be your own illusion. The practice of Buddhism is an effective and beneficial way to transcend the inherent drawbacks of human nature. The basic assumption that nature gives to everyone is that they are special and more important than others. We always judge what is good and what is bad from our own perspective. But this basic assumption cannot be correct, because everyone in the world looks at things from a different perspective and gives them different connotations. From a human perspective, a piece of rotten and smelly meat contains bacteria, which is harmful to health. But from the bacteria's perspective, rotten meat is precisely a breeding ground for them. Recognizing that this piece of meat is simply meat, devoid of good or bad. This is the meaning of Buddhism. It liberates us from the natural settings and allows us to observe and experience the world from a higher perspective. The Buddha acknowledged the constraints nature imposes on the human mind 2,600 years ago. He didn't have any modern scientific tools, but he discovered the problem and found a solution. He created a Buddhist system that integrates knowledge with practice. 2,600 years later, modern psychology allows us to rediscover the same problem, allowing us to learn the Buddha's methods and verify his thoughts. As we thoughtfully inherit Buddhist wisdom and selectively engage in its practices, it is essential that we consciously break away from the constraints of natural selection and strive to observe the world around us with a more objective perspective. Experience true inner freedom, because recognizing the world, seeing yourself clearly, and gaining freedom of mind are the true meaning of Buddhism. Thank you for watching Daily Reading Club. If you find this issue sharing helpful, don't forget to share it with your family or friends. See you next time.